Welcome back to this week's podcast of the music history variety. Last week we started talking about rhythm and pitch. More namely, we talked about rhythm and some of the building blocks of rhythm. We talked about beat, and that's how we measure time. We talked about accents, and that's our strong and weak beats. We talked about meter. That's basically how we organize beats. And we talked about rhythm and meter. Meter being that duple or triple meter, how many beats are in a bar, and rhythm being the way we put together notes, not pitch-wise, but for their value. This week we're going to continue with our rhythm, looking at syncopation and tempo, and then we're going to jump into pitch, which we won't get all the way through, but we'll begin to look at pitch a little bit. So, with no further ado, let's jump in. So, we're starting off with syncopation today. One way of obtaining interesting, striking effects in music is to displace the accent in a foreground rhythm away from their normal position on the beats of the background meter. So that is, we have the background meter giving us our constant beat, and the interesting musical effects taking place are things happening in between those beats. Da 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 da. So that da da, the one that comes off the beat, is that interesting one. This is called syncopation. In duple meter, accents can be displaced so they go 1 2 1 2 instead of 1 2 1 2. Or the syncopation can occur in between the beats, 1 and 2, as with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. 1 2 1 2 1 Rudolph 2 the Red-Nosed Reindeer 1 2. So in that example, the syncopation is on Dolph, Rudolph. We kept the strong beats on beat 1 moving forward. If you know the George M. Cohan classic, Give My Regards to Broadway, you know that it starts with the same syncopation as Rudolph. However, it also has another syncopation in the second line. 1 2 1 2 1. Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me to Herald Square. 1. So there we heard give my and herald. The consistent use of syncopation is the hallmark of African American derived popular music, from jazz to world beat. Tempo. Our discussion so far has referred to the relative durations of sound. That is, all beats are equal, some notes are twice as long as others, and so on. But nothing has been said yet about their absolute duration in fractions of a second. Tempo accounts for this. It is the term for the speed of music. In metrical music, the tempo is the rate at which the basic, regular beats of the meter follow one another. Tempo can be expressed quantitatively by such indications as the quarter note equals 60, meaning 60 quarter note beats per minute. These indications are called metronome marks, after the metronome, a mechanical or electrical device that tricks out beats at any desired tempo. When composers give directions for tempo, however, they usually prefer general terms. Rather than freezing the music's speed by means of a metronome mark, they prefer to leave some latitude for different performers different acoustical conditions in concert halls, and so on. Like the indications for dynamics, the conventional terms for tempo are in Italian. Here we see common tempo markings and their English translation. Adagio, meaning slow. Andante, on the slow side. Moderato, a moderate tempo. Allegretto, on the fast side. Allegro, fast. Presto, very fast. We also have some less common tempo indications, like largo, lento, or grave, meaning slow or very slow. Larghetto, somewhat faster than largo. Andantino, somewhat faster than andante. Vivace, or vivo, meaning lively. Molto allegro, faster than allegro. And prestissimo, very fast indeed. In their original meaning, many of these Italian words refer not to speed itself, but rather to a mood, action, or the quality that can be associated with tempo only in a general way. Thus, vivace is close to our vivacious. Allegro means cheerful, and andante, derived from the Italian word for go, might be translated as moving along steadily. Other terms indicate irregularities of tempo and tempo changes. Accelerando, getting gradually faster. Ritardando, gradually getting slower. Più lento or più allegro, meaning slower or faster. Fermata, which is a symbol that tells us to hold for indefinite length on a certain note or rest, which in effect suspends the tempo. And a tempo, meaning to go back to the main tempo. The most important terms to remember are those listed under common tempo indicators. When they appear at the top of a symphony movement or the like, they usually constitute its only heading. People refer to the andante of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, meaning a certain movement of the symphony, in this case the second, which is played at an andante tempo. Illustrations of the rhythmic terms discussed here, we're going to turn to Mozart's Piano Concerto in G, its last movement, named after its tempo, Allegretto. We won't be listening through the whole thing, but we will jump around a little bit. This piece. The beats in the melody are accented lightly, but incisively. Beat time in a moderate Allegro duple meter. You'll feel 1, 2, 1, 2. There are usually 2 notes per beat. After about 10 to 30 seconds of hearing that, we'll skip forward a little bit. Later on in the movement, the tempo has not changed, but many of the notes are now syncopated. Notice, too, that the beats are not as heavily accented as before. The piano comes in and is syncopated for another faster level. If you can manage to beat a double time 1, 2, 1, 2 here, you will find that the piano is syncopating dizzily against this faster unit. Anything the orchestra can do, the piano can do better. So here we go. Mozart's Piano Concerto in G, its final movement, the Allegretto. You hear that? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Nice and light. All right. So now we jump forward a little bit, about 3 minutes, and really try to feel that change in accent with the syncopations happening on the and beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then the piano coming in with a twice as fast feeling. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. We're going to turn to the famous third movement, the Allegro, of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. In the beginning, you'll hear a mysterious, quiet theme that's played by the cellos. It is in a fairly fast triple meter, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, starting on the weak beat, or the third beat. Sometimes we call this a pickup, and it may be hard to hear. After about 3 seconds, the cellos are answered by the wind instruments, and the tempo slows down or ritardandos. One can no longer beat time, for the meter stops too. Beethoven has marked a fermata. At about the 10-second mark, the cello music will return, up to speed again. Beethoven marks in his music a tempo. Then at the 16-second mark, another answer by the woodwind instruments with another ritardando and another fermata. Then a tempo again, and the French horns announce a very clear triple meter. So, once past its initial hesitation, this music is highly metrical, as we heard in the French horns. Now, for a non-metrical excursion, we'll check out some Gregorian chant. And this is Viri Galilei. You can hear here that we lose that sense of a strict meter, and the meter more meanders as the music goes along. And with that, we've come to the end of our 4th episode of our podcast. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get to pitch. However, next time we will jump into that wholeheartedly. This week we had some really great listening examples. We heard from Mozart, we heard from Beethoven, and we really got a good idea of some good, solid foundations of rhythm. So next week, we're going into pitch, looking at some of our important intervals and scales. And that should be our last episode on the topic of rhythm and pitch. So we'll see you back here next week. Have a great week. We'll see you then.